Hello, Nutritional Edge folks. Good afternoon. Are they nutritional edgians? Nutritional edgians? What's up, everybody?
What the heck?
Happy Thursday.
Who let Nathan start the show?
Your fault. You're spoken up first.
He said hello, nutritional edgians. Well, nutritional edgians. You must be a bunch of hobbits or something.
I like that. That's good.
But that's funny. My goodness. Yeah, we're back. What's good? Nutritional Edge peeps. We are live.
Yeah.
And Nathan's fired up, as you can tell. This is IBS month, and not because he has a lot of IBS. Maybe he does. I don't know. But it's IBS month, which means we got to talk about that microbiome.
Right.
But I think it'd be kind of good a little touch base. As you can tell, I got a nice little colorful salad going on right here that I'm working on, munching through. All the different kind of colored bell peppers, some green onions, some kale, some kidney beans, some purple potatoes, white potatoes, orange potatoes, and don't mind me as I just continue to work my way through this. I'll try not to chew too loud. I'll mute myself when I chew. But anyways, I would love to do some. What are your thoughts on doing some quick reminders, takeaways from last week?
Oh, yeah. That would be really good. Because we were good recap. I love a good recap. I think sometimes I forget about a good recap because I feel like as we learn, we need to state what we're going to say, state what we say, and then state what we just said for optimal retention. So I would love to state that. It's good. I had shrimp with I had bang bang shrimp over rice with bok choy, onions, and jalapeno today. It was delicious for lunch. We talked about IBS and the nervous system last time, which I think was such a great place to start. I was just talking to one of my patients about that, and he said, because I asked him if he would be interested in exploring about the nervous system and IBS, and he said, yeah, I didn't even know they were connected. And so we explored how the gut and brain are connected. Okay, understand that. But yeah, talking about how the nervous system controls the speed at which food moves through the gut, and it controls how and when and how much digestive juices are released in order to break the food down. So if nervous system is dysregulated, maybe through stress, maybe through an upper cervical misalignment or something, then you could have gut issues. And just from my own personal clinical experience, people that have gut issues often have mental health issues, brain fog, anxiety, depression, and vice versa. So I know that scientifically there's a link, but practically I see that go hand in hand all the time. So IBS and nervous system last time. This time it will be IBS and the microbiome, which will be fun to talk about.
Absolutely. I love that part that you mentioned regarding, like you're seeing it in practice.
Yeah.
People who are having IBS issues, and then as a consequence to that, dealing with anxiety or brain fog or depression, sleeplessness, insomnia, irritability, just a bunch of things like that. And it goes to show that if you don't feel good, you're not going to think good. And there's the neurochemical link to that. Which is the physiology to it. There's also the physiology of just how much our gut plays a role in the actual well-being of our mind. Now, I'm sure that there are like emotional stressors that might be going on in those people's lives and everything. But for the most part, all this began, they don't know why. All of a sudden, they just have it. And then you're fighting the battle of, are they able to discern whether it's just a stage or a season in their life, or are they actually going to start embodying the identity that they are the thing? or are they able to maintain that gap and that separation where it's like, this is me, I'm just dealing with this thing, trying to figure it out. And food is a huge proponent, causative factor of those things. Mm-hmm. So that was excellent. Absolutely. But you mentioned this word, microbiome, and that is kind of a wacky word for some people. They might not really understand what that is. And more than likely, those people are also the same ones who take antibiotics. Wipe that flora out of here. What the heck's a microbiome?
So the microbiome could be anything head to toe in our body where their bacteria resides. We have bacteria everywhere, but I want to talk about the bacteria in your gut. But before I talk about that, it is really interesting to think about where bacteria is and what it does. So antibacterial mouthwash kills good bacteria. And as of course, we're trying to kill the bad bacteria, bad breath. It kills the good bacteria and actually increases the risk of diabetes. There's a strong link between antibiotic mouthwash, diabetes. So every time you think about, how? It's mostly due to the fact that carbohydrate absorption begins in your mouth. So you produce salivary amylase. I don't know all the ins and outs, but I know that plays a role. But yeah, isn't that crazy? Something as benign as that.
It could be it could be that the bacteria are playing a role with how the sugar from the carbohydrate is getting absorbed in your bloodstream. Mm-hmm. And therefore maybe that's not getting broken down as thoroughly. We're getting more sugar into our blood quicker, therefore we're going to have a greater insulin spike.
Yeah.
I love mechanisms. I love trying to piece together the thing of I eat food and now I have diabetes. I also take antibacterial mouthwash. And it's like, okay, how the heck are all these three things connected? That stuff's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, very nice.
We can go. What's that? Yeah.
I was going to say, I learned something. I think it was in microbiology back in school about oral bacteria and the role that it plays in initiating the breakdown. Even have like the thought of food, like us getting hungry, and that initiates production of salivary amylase.
Yeah.
So like digestion actually starts in your mouth. It starts on your tongue. It doesn't start in the stomach. It starts up all the way up in here. This is when digestion begins.
Yeah.
That's a very, very good reminder. It's not some people know.
Doesn't even begin, believe it or not, in the mouth. I believe it starts when you look at food or smell food. I think you could technically like track it back even before. So you're making you're heating up your nice protein bucket and you're smelling that and you're looking at that and your stomach starts rumbling. It starts to produce some digestive juices because it knows that Chris is about to start chowing down. So then, isn't that crazy? It's that nervous system. Microbiome is an interesting word. And the bacteria in our gut are quite prolific. They're in the trillions. They're microscopic. And a lot of people will talk about the gut bacteria like a forest. So we want nice, healthy bacteria in there, nice trees and plants and flowers. But we have some weeds, and those are bad bacteria that may or may not be causing symptoms, but are increasing inflammation. Whereas the good bacteria, often referred to as probiotics, are promoting health in so many different ways. They're helping us break down fibers and carbohydrates. And what's really, really cool is I want to talk about the second question is, how does the gut bacteria talk to the brain? What do you think, Chris? Any thoughts about how gut bacteria actually communicate with our brain?
Well, there's a couple ways. The gut bacteria, they simulate the release of like neurochemicals and neurotransmitters.
Right.
And so when those neurochemicals, when they bind onto nerve endings, that then sends the relay message through a couple nerves and makes its way to the brain via typically the vagus nerve and then brainstem, and then into areas of the brain that are going to be receiving the requests and thus providing the requisite resources back to that area. Because everything is about maintaining balance. It's all about maintaining homeostasis. And these gut bacteria, they are creating things that are necessary for not only the breakdown of food, but also tons of neurochemicals and energy and resources. And so a lot has to do with the status quo of their respective environments, what they're releasing, what kind of neurochemicals they're releasing, what is the status of the acidity of the base of I mean, there's a lot to it, probably a lot more that I'm not even that fluent in. But I know that it's heavily involved, and so a lot of it is just it's their environment that they're creating that then interacts with nerve endings, whether it be through the enteric nervous system or also through a lot of parasympathetic nervous system. So vagus nerve, and then it's just changes in environment. So it's receptors that are recognizing change in environment, and then what needs to be done in order to maintain balance in that area of that system. But if we have bad bacteria, then we're going to be creating bad things.
Right.
And one thought that, I mean, I want to hear your take too. So how do bacteria talk to the brain? Also, how do we get bacteria in our gut in the first place? I think that's also, that was a question I had in my head when you were going, and I would love to get that answer too.
Yeah. When you mentioned like, okay, how does that happen? And then that brings up the mechanisms. That's so fun and takes a lot of time and research, but especially when you're like us, both in the head type Enneagrams, where we're always like, I want to know how. Okay, well then how does that work? And science is crazy. So you can know something, okay, gut bacteria communicate to the brain, but it's like, okay, how? Or IBS, or the gut is controlled by the nervous system. Look, in what ways? So many ways. It's a lot. But to keep things simple, I love that you mentioned how the gut bacteria are responsible for neurotransmitters. And what's crazy is that 95% of serotonin is produced in the gut. And serotonin is that neurochemical that we use for mood stabilization, gut regulation, happiness, sleep, calming down, anxiety. And another thing that gut bacteria can produce is a small chain fatty acid called butyrate. And butyrate helps to protect the gut from damage and helps to heal that, which leads me into the first thing that people at home can be doing if they can tolerate these foods to support their gut health. And that's to eat certain foods so that the bacteria like it and the good bacteria produce butyrate to heal your gut. And those foods are prebiotics. Yes.
keep calling me.
Yes.
What does I know, I was like, raise my hands like in class, like pick me. What does healing your gut mean? What does it mean your gut needs healing? What does that mean?
So our gut's lining is replaced every 3 days, the cells in it, which is a huge turnover. Our red blood cells live 90 to 120 days without needing to be replaced. So our gut withstands a lot of energy needs and damage. So replacing new cells, managing the release or inhibition of zonulin. Zonulin is a chemical that has been shown to increase leaky gut, which the scientific term for that is increased intestinal permeability. So if zonulin is being released too much, then the tight junctions, which are these little gaps in the gut lining, will stay open too long, or when they're not supposed to, potentially triggering a food sensitivity. So there's a variety of ways that they can do that. So they can be just repairing cells, regulating and controlling inflammation so it doesn't get out of hand. And just dealing with this massive turnover of cells.
What's zonulin and what causes that to get produced?
Zonulin is this, I don't know exactly if it's like a protein or something, but it's a chemical that has honestly only really recently been talked about. Gluten, for instance, increases zonulin. Not necessarily meaning everyone needs to go on a gluten-free diet, but a lot of people with autoimmune diseases or people that have food intolerance, food sensitivity do well with going on a gluten-free diet. It's one of the most studied, interesting concepts. But that's why you should get testing, which you can ask me about, to see if you need to avoid gluten or not. But yeah, so what causes it to be released? I don't know that mechanism has been explored in depth enough. I think there's a lot of questions about zonulin, like what increases it, and maybe it's increased differently in other people. But we know that stress is very difficult on the gut, very hard on the gut. We know that a poor diet, lack of exercise, poor sleep, all influences inflammation and the over proliferation of bad bacteria. And so prebiotics are going to be found in a lot of fruits and vegetables and whole grains. Apples, bananas are and onions, leeks. Those are some of the best prebiotic foods. Beans. Those are all good.
So you said that gluten. So thoughts going in my head right now. That was a great flow. So we pretty well established that gluten causes inflammation, and not just in our gut, but also in our body. And typically, if something is causing inflammation in our body, that means that it's getting through our gut. Because majority of inflammation is caused via stress. Yeah. Stress causes inflammation. If stress is occurring widespread in our body, that means it's traveling through mediums, either through blood or nerves, lymphatic. So it's traveling through serous mediums, fluid transport things, especially if the inflammatory processes are being traveled through blood or traveling through blood.
Yeah.
Then that means that it's originating in the gut. And that the gut itself is a root issue of inflammation, byproduct of stress. And I was like, which came first, inflammation or the stress? I think that's stressors are either physical, chemical, or emotional. Food is chemical. So if gluten is known as an inflammatory mediator, an inflammatory causer, and we just learned that gluten has zonulin. Zonulin is what makes the tight junctions in our gut weak. It's almost like it's like a barrier that allows like cars to get through. It's almost like instead of having a roadblock, we want a roadblock because it's dividing our gut tube, which has the food, the bolus that we ate, that's going to turn into a bowel movement, versus the inner layer, which we want to keep all the bad stuff in there. And then we have the other side of the coin of the gut, which is the rest of our body. And so you're saying that if we eat a lot of gluten, we're going to create more zonulin. Zonulin makes these weaker, which means that bad stuff can escape through, get into our blood, and thus now we're having inflammatory processes around, and that's what's causing a lot of dysfunction in our organs.
Nice. Yeah, I love that. That's good. That's a good conclusion. And another thing too, it's if these tight junctions are staying open too long, you might notice harmless antigens being triggered by the immune system. So the immune system is right there, ready to like one cell layer away from the gut lining. And so if you have these antigens, which is a protein, so like milk has an antigen. And if our body under mechanisms that, again, are still being kind of studied, if our body for some reason develops a hypersensitivity to milk, that can either be a food allergy or food sensitivity. And it's seeing this harmless milk antigen as a threat and starts to release chemical mediators through our white blood cells to attack it. And then that causes all these symptoms.
Yeah, that's another thing that people get twisted is they think that our immune system is only working when we're sick, when we have a cough or a cold or a flu, but our immune system's working 24/7, and it's everywhere. It's not just in our nose and in our chest. It's literally our entire body is caked with immune cells. They're created in certain areas, such as like a bone marrow or a thymus or or a spleen or our appendix, like Peyer's patches, stuff like that. But they are everywhere, and they're incredibly high density in our gut. And that now it's starting to really piece together, because I like the gluten concept, because so if I have gluten, eating a bunch of gluten, and then that's creating this thing called zonulin. Zonulin is making my gut like weak, gut lining weak. Therefore, things that we eat, bad stuff that we eat, can escape through that and get into our bloodstream, which we don't want. We want to have a nice, strong, tight barrier. That's going to be activating our immune system, because all of a sudden they have this foreign thing that they're not used to coming in. Thus, we're having an active immune system. Now we have an active immune system response. And then when our immune system gets activated, that is now we're going to start having symptoms, because we're constantly in a state of our immune system operating at a high level. And more often than not, that's where autoimmune conditions begin, is because our body is fighting this thing that came through our gut, and that thing typically will have a similar look or appearance as a certain flag on a cell of a different type of like organ cell. And all of a sudden now it'll start attacking that organ cell, because it thinks that it's this thing that came invaded through my gut, most commonly in Hashimoto's with the thyroid. But that's actually really good reflection and connection of those, plus the immune system leading to autoimmune conditions, because most people think that it's genetic.
Right.
We think it's genetic, and 95% of things that are genetic are actually epigenetic, which means they're environmental, which means that it's things that we are introducing into our environment that's causing the issue. The reason why we think it's genetic is because the behaviors are passed down generation to generation, not the genes.
Nature, nurture. Yeah. And I think of genetics and a lot of preventable conditions as predisposed, like maybe a greater likelihood. But what you do 9 times out of 10 will have the biggest effect, and will control whether like an autoimmune disease might actually happen, which is so interesting. And food intolerance or food sensitivities might play a huge role in autoimmune diseases, or vice versa. Maybe the autoimmune disease is causing the food sensitivity. Another thing that's really interesting with autoimmune diseases is viral infections and pathogens. COVID, for instance, has been shown to increase development of type 1 diabetes, which is an autoimmune condition where the pancreas can no longer produce enough insulin to manage someone's blood sugar. So it's eventually, without insulin, someone will die. But just recently, science passed its 100th anniversary of developing insulin, the life-saving treatment for people. So that's pretty cool. But the reason how COVID is doing that, again, this isn't that in depth of an explanation, but it was changing people's beta cells, which produce the insulin in the pancreas. So they're just changing that beta cell into an alpha cell. That's all it did, and causing type 1 diabetes. And I've met people too that they have that. I know from research that it's been shown to cause a slight increase in that. But people developing it way past when people typically develop type 1 diabetes, which is in childhood. Viral infections, stress, predisposition by genetics, and just a poor diet, poor gut can all play a huge role.
So you're saying that COVID was causing the pancreas beta cells to convert into alpha cells.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then since it was not a natural alpha cell, our body started attacking those?
No, we need the beta cells, and that's what produces the insulin. So the alpha cells produce enzymes. Now, I don't know if they're converting them into functioning alpha cells. It might just be like a useless alpha cell. But I know for why it was causing the disease.
Oh, that's why it causes type 1 is because they're getting rid of the beta cells.
Exactly. And we have to have the beta cells.
That's right.
Beta cells have the endocrine function, and alpha cells have the exocrine function.
Yep, that question was on so many of my exams and my board tests.
Yeah.
Which beta cells in the pancreas. Yeah. Okay. So type 1, the beta cells are being impacted, and since they're getting converted from beta to alpha, therefore they're not having enough beta, therefore not creating enough insulin.
Yeah.
So that's how that's occurring. And then type 2 is the insulin's getting created, but the issues is in our cells itself. Our cells are having receptors that are resistant to that insulin coming in and binding. Thus, the insulin cannot get the sugar from our blood into our cell.
Yeah. And that insulin sensitivity and resistance is such a fascinating thing. There's so many facets to it. That for sure has got to be a whole episode. Insulin resistance. That could be a whole 5-part series. That would be a good one. We've got to talk about that.
Yeah, it's easy. So with all the stuff we're talking about, this has been some really interesting flows. What can we do to support all that?
Yeah. That's the biggest question, right? That people are probably wondering, like, what do I do to support my gut health?
So like microbiome, like what can I do for like the bacteria in it? Like, I mean, for me, like I like to try to eat like yogurt and kefir and fruits and veggies and stuff, but I guess that would be the way of getting bacteria into my gut in a healthy way. I don't know if me rolling around in grass can do the same thing or not, but maybe it does. I don't know.
Yeah, well, you want to feed the good and decrease the bad. So by starting with decreasing the bad, would be to limit your sugar intake. It's one of the most controllable ways to avoid bad bacteria from proliferating, which means basically expanding, creating new bacteria. So we want that to go away. So bad bacteria love to thrive on processed sugar, and you can extend that to just refined carbohydrates in general. So trying to limit our soda, sweets, candy, white bread, those types of things will make a big difference. Decreasing stress and rolling around in the grass, well, probably exposing you to some bacteria in probably a good way. So we're not just living in a hyper sanitized environment. So but also that would ground you. That would decrease your stress. We're very much creatures of nature, and nature really helps to decrease stress. So get outside, roll around in the grass, take your shoes off, walk on uneven surfaces. So go to Pinnacle. And so there's always to decrease the bad. Limit or be really cautious about antibiotic use. So and take them how you're supposed to take them. Don't stop them when you're supposed to stop them. If you're taking an antibiotic, think about taking the soil-based probiotic Saccharomyces boulardii, which is in one of the most common probiotic supplements, Florastor. There's some other ones, but Florastor has that bacteria, and that's really the only strain of bacteria that survives antibiotic uses. So you can be taking a probiotic while you take antibiotics. So you can check with your doctor and make sure that if you have to be taking antibiotics, can you also take that to mitigate some of the damage that the antibiotics will play.
So when it comes, I guess kind of to run it back, what are like the top 3 like most valuable aspects of our microbiome? Why is this? Because microbiome is super important.
Yeah.
So for people who end up checking in, especially on like a recording, why is it so dang important? Because it is.
So immune system, they're the first layer of our immune system. If there is a pathogen, it's going to encounter a probiotic, and the probiotic can begin to start sending signals to our nervous system, which can communicate with the immune system to start ramping up the attack. So our immune system, gut lining integrity, which can not only make you feel better and reduce symptoms, but potentially clear up food sensitivities or reduce their risk by producing butyrate. So it's just helping the health of the gut itself, and then it's helping to break food down. So once again, helping to improve digestion and reduce symptoms. And if we can break food down, we can absorb it. So yeah, I mean, immune system, gut health, integrity of the lining of the stomach of the intestines, and and then absorption and digestion.
What does alcohol do to the microbiome?
Typically bad things. Typically not good.
Does it kill it? Does it kill good bacteria?
It could feed bad. It could, especially if it's a sugary alcohol, and it could decrease good bacteria. So that would be one that you will want to limit. I'm not sure about the differences between healthier alcohols like red wine versus a margarita, but margarita is going to have sugar and a bunch of things. So all that sugar content is going to be bad, whereas red wine, like a good dry red wine, probably not as much damage. The things that really concern me are like sodas for microbiome. And then how do you increase the good? You talked about kefir and yogurt. Those are great. Those actually have good bacteria in it. And when you consume it, some of it makes it down to our intestines and implants in the intestinal wall and starts growing. That's great. Most probiotics are going to have like 20 to 30 times the amount of probiotics as in like a serving of yogurt. So if someone has a pretty significant gut health issue like Crohn's, then yogurt may not have the therapeutic potential that a probiotic does. So sometimes they need to play around with some supplements. But focusing on getting a well-balanced diet with fruits and vegetables, healthy plant-based sources, healthy animal sources, is going to be a huge way of feeding the gut you already have. So you're born and you already have gut bacteria. C-sections will be permanently have a altered gut microbiome versus natural births. So certain things increase your risk of dysbiosis, which is too little good, too much bad. There are some things that you can do. I think the biggest emphasis I could place is on increasing the good is to get fruits and vegetables. I mean, trying to get fresh fruits and vegetables are what helps to feed the healthy gut bacteria.
So what about carnivore? I want to know about carnivore in regards to the microbiome, and I also would like to differentiate between prebiotic versus probiotic. I think that's necessary.
Yeah, it's a good distinction. And then you've got postbiotic, another term to throw in.
Is that the same as a chocolate chip cookie?
Oh, that would be nice.
Same as dessert, right? Eat after dinner, post.
Postbiotic. My postbiotic.
My postbiotic is a chocolate cream swirl ice cream from Ben and Jerry's.
Oh, that feeds the soul, not the bacteria. They all have their place.
That's funny.
So a carnivore diet has not been studied extensively. So we'll see. It has the benefit of decreasing sugar and processed carbohydrates. So that could be good for decreasing the bad. But yeah, it kind of frightens me. when you remove fiber. And the assumption is, well, I absorb everything I need, so I don't need to have stool, because a lot of our stool comes from fiber. It's a nice hypothesis, but we do know that processed meat consumption and just too little plant foods increase risk of colorectal cancer. So until carnivore diet research says it doesn't increase colorectal research, I'm going to keep eating as many fruits and vegetables as I can stand, because I really don't want colon cancer, or any other cancer that plant-based foods can reduce the risk of, which is most cancers.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's good. I mean, we have molars for a reason. That's how I see it. We got molars for a reason. We got molars and incisors. I'm unapologetically an omnivore. I tried carnivore for like maybe a day, and I was like, I don't like it.
Yeah.
I think part of the big argument too is that like the animals eat the plants. Like the animals that we eat are primarily vegetarian.
Right.
Chicken, turkeys, cows, they're all primarily vegetarian. So we're like, oh, they're getting the vegetables. We're getting the vegetables through the meat.
That's a terrible. That's one of the worst explanations of, or not explanations of, like theories, not even theory, hypotheses of like, well, I kept hearing another one on about plant-based diets. It's kind of off, but yeah, you can hear a lot of theories.
It's basically the inverse.
Right.
Yes. It's basically saying that like we get meat, or the animals eat all the veggies, and so all we're eating is the vegetables that's just going through the digestive systems of animals, and so just take out the middleman, just eat plants.
Yeah.
You need both.
I know. We are omnivores, and we tend to function best when we can get a little bit of everything, and it makes sense for our gut in a lot of ways to have a nice diverse diet. The more diversity in your diet of healthy things. I'm not talking about like, oh sweet, I had Cheetos plus Doritos today. Is that feeding my, like, I'm talking about nuts and seeds and fruits and veggies and proteins, like spices. Increase your variety of those foods, and you tend to feed the gut and increase the diversity. So that we haven't talked about that. We want all kinds of different types of bacteria. So we'll have to have an episode on like probiotic supplements and picking a good one, and what symptoms might happen, what you want to look for, what you want to stay away from. But yeah, I don't think to promote your gut health, I don't think you have to do anything drastically different than what we talk about anyways on most of our episodes. But it's just another reason to do those things. The 5 pillars: the sleep, the stress, the food, the movement, the functionality.
Right. All in designed to lower stress load and increase our tolerance to stress. You want to have as wide of a gap as possible.
Yeah.
As high of a tolerance, as low of a stress load. So probiotic, prebiotic.
Right.
Which one comes first?
Well, prebiotic is what feeds our bacteria. So that's that's the fiber, or that's like the flesh of the apple has prebiotics like inulin, and that is not digested. It actually makes it all the way to our large intestine, and then our bacteria get to munch on that, and that's what they can help use for fuel to survive. So you have this symbiotic relationship where we're feeding them some fiber, and they promote all of the benefits that keep us healthy. So prebiotic is what we eat, and then the probiotic is the bacteria itself, specifically the good kind. And a postbiotic would be anything that the bacteria produce, like butyrate, I think would count as like a postbiotic. And so that's that chemical that's improving our health in some way. So yes, you can introduce probiotics directly, but yeah. You can do that.
So I want to so or prebiotics is in the fruit that you
Right.
said?
Fruits and veggies and
Okay, so
yeah.
Fruits and veggies are my prebiotic.
Right.
And then my probiotic, that would be in like my Greek yogurt and kefir and sauerkraut, right?
Yep.
And which one do you want to have? And so prebiotics feed the bacteria in my gut.
Yep.
And so therefore I need to have bacteria in my gut to feed.
Right.
So then would it make more sense to have the yogurt and kefir before fruits and veggies?
You don't necessarily have to consume probiotic rich foods. You have to consume prebiotic rich foods to enhance that. Now, again, carnivore diet, you pretty much don't have any prebiotics. So I don't know. I don't think we know the extent potential damage that could occur to the gut, but prebiotics to me are like a necessity. Probiotics, think about it as almost like topping off, and that's a great thing. So yogurt and kefir and sauerkraut and natto and kimchi, they help to top off the probiotics you already have. And if someone like with IBS doesn't have a lot of good bacteria and they can tolerate those probiotic rich foods, that's awesome. I will say that there's so much bacteria in our gut. Don't think it's a quick fix. Think about even a probiotic supplement with like 50 billion bacteria as a, or 50 billion CFUs as a drop in a pond. Like think about a little dropper and putting it into a pond and being like, there's my probiotic. So while it can have an effect, think about what you're doing, like what you're doing every day. And then what you kind of, so that's years and decades. And that's playing a huge role too. Not just, am I eating enough of those things? So yeah, think about yogurt, kimchi is like topping off your probiotics you have. Think about prebiotics as your must-have fuel to keep those suckers healthy.
Gotcha. Nice.
Gut bugs.
Gut bugs. Me them gut bugs, peeps. Gotta get them in. Yeah, that's sweet. Yeah, my buddy, who actually just finished up chiropractic college, he was a nutrition major in undergrad at UC Davis, and he had learned the mindset of feeding the good bacteria and starving out the bad. And I think that was a really good frame of mind when I was first learning about, because I had no idea about gut microbiome or nothing, taking antibiotics and stuff whenever I got sick. And that was a really good frame of mind for me to be just like, like starve out the bad as like a mechanism for not eating sugary foods or things with processed sugars in it. If you just starve it out, eventually they can't be in there. Thus, all you'll have is good bacteria, and then they can start healing up your gut. And that's a process, not an overnight thing. You can't just do it once. You got to stack up the days 24/7, 7 days a week. And then you stack the weeks. That's really how you create momentum for that. It would be good at some point to go in on a lot of the signs and symptoms of leaky gut.
Yeah. And
I think there's
you should talk about the fasting protocol sometime. I bet Mindy Peltz is the Fast Like a Girl book author who probably has a good gut health fast. I'm sure she's got some of those.
Oh yeah, plenty of stuff for microbiome and gut reset and all those. I mix in those every once in a while, just to kind of keep me on track, on pace. So no, her stuff's great. It's excellent.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is good. That was some good
pills. That's fun. Good stuff.
I really like the gluten zonulin leaky junction. That connected a lot of dots for me. That was sweet.
Yeah.
It's almost like we're just teaching each other with the audience.
We are. It's just a chat, and it's fun. Learn so much every time.
So
yeah. So next week,
that was sweet.
More IBS month stuff, and then week after next, I'll have Christy Jones on for part 2.
Yeah.
I
will be in Italy.
You'll be enjoying.
I'll be in Italy. I'll be
stress reduction.
I'll be gone, girl. Oh yeah, I'll be enjoying that big time. So I will not be here. But that'll be fun. So
all right,
everybody. That was sweet.
Nutritional Edgians, have a great Thursday.
Hey yo, Nutritional Edgians.